What's up, queens? Welcome to the Female Dating Strategy. I'm your host, Reaux.
I'm Savannah.
And this is Lilith.
And we have a great show. We're going to talk all things royal family, including that new interview with Meghan and Harry and Oprah that's garnering a lot of controversy right now in the British press, specifically from one Piers Morgan. So from watching the interview with Meghan and Harry and Oprah, I mean, the one thing that kind of stuck out to me is, like, first of all, she seemed really, really naive about the British royal family. And as an American, I have to admit, I don't know that much either. So I don't know if there's like more history there that you can go into.
Yeah, so the resident FDS historian will now take over and give you a whistle-stop tour of the history of the royal family, just to put the Meghan and Harry interview into more context, because it seems like a lot of the people who are watching that interview may not necessarily understand how the royal family, works as an institution. So the royal family is essentially, like any royal family, is about self-preservation. You know, they are all about, producing heirs and passing down their wealth, titles, and rules and customs down to the next generation so they can keep going. And so power remains with them. So in terms of the royal family, when it comes to marriage and relationships, they don't operate on the same, they don't subscribe to the same rules that we would do. So, for example, William and Harry, they have to get the Queen's permission, when they want to marry somebody. So the Queen can actually veto, their marriage if she deems that person unsuitable. This did actually happen back in the 1950s when the Queen's sister, Princess Margaret, wanted to marry Group Captain Peter Townsend. Group Captain was a divorcee and his ex-wife was still alive. And at that time, people in the Church of England couldn't remarry if their spouse was still alive.
Oh,
so
wow.
So the Queen essentially told her sister no, and her sister had to marry somebody else. It was the same story with Charles. Now, as much as Charles satisfies many, he ticks many boxes on the low value scale. He initially wanted to marry Camilla in the 1970s. But at the time, Camilla was deemed unsuitable because it was common knowledge amongst the aristocracy that she was essentially not a virgin.
So, wait. So he couldn't marry her because she was publicly not a virgin? So she had the pedigree and everything was fine. Ooh.
Yeah, so she'd had like public boyfriends, and it was basically common knowledge that she wasn't a virgin, so she wasn't deemed suitable. And fun fact, Charles actually dated Diana's older sister before he dated Diana.
Oh, wow.
Also, wasn't Prince Charles kind of a fuckboy? Like, he wasn't a virgin when he got married.
Oh, 100%. He was in his 30s when, and he had a series of, girlfriends, mistresses. He was actually dating Camilla under the table before he had to end that because she wouldn't make a suitable bride. So essentially Diana and Princess Diana walked into a marriage where, she wasn't really wanted by her partner because he was still pining after Camilla. So Charles wasn't a virgin. He was 32 when he married Diana. And Diana was primarily chosen because she had the right, social standing. She was a lady and she was a virgin. That was quite a big deal at the time. So if we then fast forward to William and Harry's childhood, we see he went through the very public divorce of his parents. Charles and Camilla were recorded basically having quite graphic phone sex, and it was splashed all over the papers. And then we see, Harry loses his mother in a very public and traumatic way. There is actually footage of, him as, at his mother's funeral, having to walk behind her coffin in front of millions of people. And he wasn't allowed to cry. Like, that is one of the rules of the royal family, is that you'll never see them cry in public. So it seems like Harry has been traumatized by the death of his mother. And if we look at his position, he was, they referred to William and Harry in the papers at the time as the heir and the spare, which is quite Which, I mean, I'm not gonna, bust out the violin for Harry as he's still a millionaire, but it's quite, upsetting to know that you'll always be second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, fiddle to your brother, depending on how many children he has. And Princess Diana always used to say that she would always give Harry a bit more attention when they were boys, because she said William will one day be king and he will have all the attention and adulation and adoration, but Harry, won't. And we see this when he starts to become a young man, he sort of goes off the rails. So he was seen, dressing up as a Nazi.
Wait, what? Harry dressed up as a Nazi? What?
Yeah, I was going to ask about that because and he was an American when he did that, wasn't he?
Yeah, I think he went through a phase from like 2002 to about 2008 where he just went off the rails. Like he called one of his, because he served in the army, and he called another soldier like a racial slur. He was caught doing strip poker in Vegas. Like he just did all the sorts of things that I guess a wild child, so to speak, would do. And I sort of understand that, because he doesn't really have a place in the British royal family, especially after, William, married Kate Middleton and they started having a family. He was essentially made irrelevant by the arrival of his nieces and his nephews, because it pushes him further and further down the line of succession. So we see Harry sort of having an existential crisis almost, and then comes along, Meghan Markle. Now, from the interview, I 100% agree with Reaux that she comes across as very naive about how the royal family works.
Naive to the point where I struggled to believe at first that she didn't Google him at all. I was like, how do you not Google somebody in 2020 or whenever they got together, 2018?
Do you know what I mean? And the thing is, he could have easily have been like Prince Naveen in Princess and the Frog, have no money. Like, you would just want to Google just to make sure that he is who he says he is. So,
yeah.
I mean...
Well, she said they had mutual friends and those mutual friends vouched for him. I could see it being like, especially of the celebrity classes, that they understand the tabloids write nonsense all the time. So I would have believed her more if she said, oh, I did Google him, but I didn't believe any of these things, or I didn't completely understand. Because what she did say, she didn't completely understand the firm or the job, because there's not really there's the British royal family's public image, and then behind the scenes, which is not necessarily as publicly well known, especially not to Americans. But I kind of felt like she would have at least Googled, certain aspects of the royal family that she seemed to be somewhat naive about.
And even if she didn't, I feel like Harry had a responsibility to clue her in, because Harry has actually lost girlfriends. Like, he was with a woman called Chelsea Davy for about 7 years. She ended up leaving him because she couldn't handle being a royal, or the potential of being a royal. She was like, nah, I'm out. Like, because it's a very, very restrictive life. It's not like Disney. You can't even go and see your if you marry into them, you can't even go and see your parents when you want. It has to all be, pre-planned, pre-arranged, pre-authorized. You don't really have a say in what clothes you wear or how you present yourself.
Well, she did mention, or Meghan did mention, about like wanting to go to the hospital or just wanting to just leave to go somewhere, and it being like a huge ordeal. You can't just leave the royal family to go to the grocery store or something like that. It's a massive undertaking every time, a massive undertaking and public PR job every time you're in the public. So I don't know to the extent that she was aware of that, is I think what she was trying to say. And yeah, and Harry should have clued her in, because she even said that she didn't really know that she was supposed to curtsy or how to curtsy, and then Harry had to teach her minutes before meeting the Queen. The thing is, as American, I think we don't necessarily take the royal monarchy seriously, especially since obviously we broke off 250 years ago because we were like, fuck your figgy pudding ass monarchy. So she probably didn't think all the formalities were like real. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's the formalities in public and then there's the people. So she might have thought is more or less the same as being a Hollywood person, where you call the paparazzi to do certain PR jobs, but like behind the scenes they're just regular people. But I guess no, everything is curated. Their entire life is curated to present an image.
I remember watching the news when I was in the gym, just like on the TV, there was a whole news story about her closing the door. Like, that was a whole drama where she closed her own car door. And apparently this is bad because, when you're a royal, you have a servant close the door for you. And so the fact that she just got out of the car and slammed the door shut on her own was like a controversy. I remember thinking to myself, like, what the fuck? Who cares? Why is this still a rule in 2020?
And, there was a huge, when there's a royal baby, literally hours after the birth, Kate Middleton is all, made up, hair done, and she's holding the baby on the steps, even though she's literally had her vagina ripped apart by, a labor and delivery. I remember that it was a massive, massive deal when Harry and Meghan just refused to do that. They didn't want to be in front of the cameras straight after giving birth. I think they even, I guess, misled the press about when she was having the baby. That was a massive, massive deal because the royal family are seen as belonging to the people. They're not seen as their own individuals.
Yeah.
And I think that Meghan she clearly wants to be influential, but the problem is she chose a family where you have maybe the visibility, but you don't have the freedom to be influential in the way that you want to be. So giving interviews to Oprah when she was in the firm, as they call it, was off the table. They carefully control your image, even the engagements that you go to, even the way you walk, the way you wave is very, very curated. You can't just be like waving anyhow, you have to wave in a certain way.
So she claimed too that there was no royal family training either when she came in. She was saying that nobody taught her how to do anything. Now, the British press dug up some old articles where allegedly there was like a person in charge of giving Meghan royal training. So again, what's fact and what's fiction on here? Maybe they gave her very cursory stuff and then she felt like it wasn't adequate enough. But yeah, she was saying about how she didn't know how she was supposed to sit. And that was one of her first public outings with the Queen. And she was sitting next to the Queen and people were criticizing the way she sat. If you don't grow up in the culture, and America is sort of famously informal, I don't know that we have, a stiff handshake is probably the extent of our formalities, even with our president. Especially with someone like Trump, for example. We don't really have I want to see, do we have like a genteel class or something like that? I guess is the way to describe it. I don't think that we do.
Yeah, I think you do, but they just sort of don't get, they're not like interesting enough to show up in the media most of the time. Like there's the old money Americans, the WASPs and stuff.
But see, our millionaires and our billionaires always dress down. That's kind of actually what they're famous for. Some of the old money people, they always dress, in flannel shirts. Steve Jobs was famous for his black turtleneck. You wouldn't necessarily know who's very, very wealthy by looking at them. And in fact, it's actually kind of funny because the lower you are on the economic line in the United States, the more conspicuous consumption is appealing, versus like the very wealthy people go out of their way to not be conspicuously consumptive, except for their kids who like to stunt on the gram. But like the old money people, right? They don't really. It's the difference between the Hiltons and then Paris Hilton, right? Paris Hilton was kind of famous for being decadent and flaunting her wealth all the time, but the Hiltons behind the scenes were very subdued, and they didn't like the fact that Paris was doing that.
So, going, back to the interview. So, and I'm not really surprised that, Meghan felt she was so unprepared for it because they announced their engagement in November 2017. They were married by May 2018. So that's probably about 6-7 months and it's not even just a royal life. It's, moving to another country. Basically, I guess she shut down all her social media accounts. She came to a different country, had to start the citizenship process, which, by the way, the British citizenship process is not an easy one. And also, try to navigate her way through this institution. So I'm not really surprised that she found herself, very, very woefully underprepared. And then she became pregnant very, very quickly as well. By the autumn of that year, or the fall, as Americans say, she was pregnant with her first child.
So the thing about that too is I feel like the media was trying to spin the narrative that Meghan had manipulated Harry into all this and like in that short timeline, but it definitely seems like it was mutual. Like he needed an escape route, and then furthermore, he probably wanted to get her on board before she really realized what she was getting into.
Yeah, I completely agree. And Harry has always had a very difficult relationship with, I guess, the royal family, especially after his mum passed away. his relationship with his brother, like him and William used to be really, really close. Even after William married Kate, they used to share a household. So a royal household is like you share basically like the same like servants and whatnot. They had the same. Like, I think Harry even lived with them for some time.
Yeah.
That relationship was clearly broken down.
How funny was that pap stroll from William the next day after the interview? Whose moms did they find in like the full African dress and long box braids? And he's like, I'm not a racist. And I'm like, what? Where did you find this woman?
Here's the thing with William and Kate, right? This is something I've noticed. When they like want to do something that is controversial, like going on holiday for a month, or after this, when Meghan said, actually, Kate was the one who made me cry, not the other way around, they do this massive publicity tour. And it's so, because like we've literally not seen them in public for about a year. Then all of a sudden they're posing for pictures with black people. Like you can tell you can tell they're
stock issued black people.
You can tell their PR machine is literally like, must prove not racist.
But I'm like, who was the woman? Who is she? Did they just snatch her off the street? Like, hey, do you want to help us take a picture here? Like, someone come grab their auntie, because.
And it's also disingenuous because you can literally see them in a non-Western country where they are, sitting on thrones that are being held up by black people.
Right.
And it's like, these images don't compute. Like, you're saying we're not racist, but it's like...
There was a tweet where they said, how are you going to be responsible for 65 worldwide Independence Days and then be like, we're not racist? I mean, including ours over here in the States.
And, William says his family's not racist, but Prince Philip has been known to say some very, very racist stuff, but everybody just laughs off as, oh, dear old Philip again. But he said some really, really offensive stuff about, Chinese people, but people just laugh it off, but it's not funny.
I did watch like the season 1 of The Crown, and there's the one scene where she's on tour or whatever in some African country, and she says, the speech, I don't know what it is, but there's just the line of like, oh, these savages are now under our protection, or whatever. And it was just like so fucking painful to listen to. Did not age well.
Like he said to a group of British students during a trip to China, if you stay here much longer, you'll all be slitty-eyed. And everyone laughed.
Wow.
I'm not, like, he's just said so, when, William's like, oh, my family's not racist. I'm just like, sure, pal.
Yeah, they're like, oh, it's just our racist old grandpa, like, crazy old Philip. You don't have to listen to him, whatever. Like, he's set in his ways.
And it seemed like they were concerned about the baby's skin color, too. Since they're all optics, they probably had to be completely panicking that the child might come out brown, right? Between Meghan and Harry. So... Who do you think said the comment? It was probably all of them, to be honest with you. I don't even believe it was one person.
I mean, Harry's kind of narrowed down the suspects, so it's not the Queen or Philip. I mean, I can kind of believe it might be Philip, actually, based on what he said. But the general feeling in the UK, at least amongst my friends, is that it's William. It's William.
What?
Yeah,
what?
That's why he came out with someone's mom the next day. He found his government-issued black person to do the pap stroll with.
And he said it so unconvincingly. The reporter asked him, he was like, oh, my family's not racist, just casually just walking. So, but yeah, I think, with Meghan, I just can't, I think the sticking point for me with her is that if she truly went into this completely blind, that is gross negligence to yourself. But then she also said that her British friends, warned her about the press. They said, Harry's great, but the press will destroy you. And she just didn't listen.
I think the British press is different conceptually than the press in the United States. The press in the United States, the paparazzi, they do hound celebrities, but there's so many what we would call flyover states where the paparazzi doesn't exist. So if you don't live in New York or LA, they're pretty much not going to bother you because they tend to congregate in places where there's high celebrity traffic. So a lot of times the relationship with the paparazzi and our celebrities is mutual. Like celebrities do what we call pap strolls. They call the paparazzi to take pictures of them, quote unquote, casually doing things, right? Especially if they're trying to create a PR relationship for a big upcoming movie or something like that. So the press used to be really, really nasty to like Britney Spears, and Britney got the worst of it. And maybe that is more in line with how the British press operates now. But now, I mean, I don't know how it is from pre-internet versus post-internet, but I know like right when the internet and social media was taking off, Britney was hounded 24/7 all the time. Everything she did was front page news, and she was having a literal mental and emotional breakdown. So I kind of imagine that's what Meghan was going through. And perhaps when she started talking about like being suicidal and having suicidal ideation, that she was probably getting what Americans would conceptualize as the Britney Spears treatment. Which I think after Britney Spears' breakdown, you saw a lot of people, we saw a lot of the paparazzi back off because it started actually to make the American public upset to see paparazzi going to crash scenes and trying to get, like, you know, when Kobe Bryant died, there was paparazzi there trying to get pictures of his body, and the family hadn't even been notified yet. So the American public has now developed a distaste for angry, aggressive paparazzi. So they've sort of backed off of celebrities, and now it's a little bit more mutually beneficial. But I think for our American listeners that don't understand the British press, just think like the Britney era paparazzi.
Yeah, and it, you know, if we look at how Harry's mother died as well, she was pursued by paparazzi. So there was there's just been that whole distrust of the press, I think, from Harry towards the paparazzi. They actually issued a formal apology, I think, in the early 2000s for basically like pursuing her to death, essentially.
I'm surprised there wasn't like a change in the British press after that. I mean, that was such a massive tragedy. I don't know. How did the British take it afterwards? Were they just right back on the same media bullshit right after that death? Or
yeah, Diana was very, I mean, she was very, very mourned, but, you know, as usual, the press were soon back on form. And, you know, the royal family carefully managed their relationships with the press as well. So they tend to not respond to press intrusion until it gets really, really bad, and then they'll strike deals with them. So I remember when like Charles went on holiday with William and Harry, and because the press were going to pursue them anyway, I think they went for like 2 weeks or something. He said, okay, you can take photos for the first 5 days and then you have to leave us alone. So they'll strike deals like that. That just because, you know, and that was that was a scandal actually when William and Kate got married and she was sunbathing topless on their honeymoon, in a French paparazzo, essentially, he managed to get a picture of her like topless and published it in the French magazines, and the royal family were furious about it, but there wasn't really much they could do there because it was published in France, but British newspapers refused to publish the photo. So they have a very precarious relationship, I would say, with the press. But again, Meghan wasn't to know the dynamics. And, you know, I will admit in the beginning, you know, Meghan was quite well received by majority of the press. She was seen as a breath of fresh air, the first, you know, biracial, like royal, essentially. You know, their wedding was really nice. It was nice to watch. They had a very different wedding.
The wedding was interesting too, because yeah, they had a Black American preacher do, was it the officiation actually? So I remember that being very jarring to see this old institution and then see like a dose of Southern American like baptism put in there.
Yeah, and I remember when he was ranting about, I think, like basically racism and colonialism, and the Queen and the royal family were just sitting there like, okay, yeah. He just didn't care. He did not care. Like, he was just speaking his truth.
When else was he going to get that opportunity? I mean, but that's America, right?
It was also like when Donald Trump, when he came to visit and he walked in front of the Queen, the press had a meltdown because nobody walks in front of the Queen in this country. She is the first person. But Donald Trump clearly didn't care. Like, he left this old lady in the dust when he was walking.
Again, we do not respect your tea and crumpet ass monarchy. America. shouldn't maybe celebrate that. We do have a reputation abroad of being like very disrespectful of people's customs, which is not a great thing.
Yeah.
But sometimes when you just see these very rich, wealthy, like uptight people, it's actually kind of funny to see Americans just kind of trample all over whatever they're doing.
So, when, Meghan and Harry were saying that, she was getting too popular and they were threatened by that, it kind of took me back to the days of Princess Diana where, when Charles, when they would go out on joint engagements, people would be like, we want to see Diana to Charles. So basically, we don't want to see you. And technically, he was, as Prince of Wales, he was in order of precedence, he came first, but not to the people. And similarly, when Meghan went out with the Queen, I remember a woman in the crowd was like, to the Queen, can you give these flowers to Meghan?
Oh,
it's
no.
like, you don't say that. You don't
that was the beginning of the problem then. That right there, that was the beginning of the end. Oh my God.
Yeah, the royals, they don't like to be overshadowed. Yeah, they don't like to be upstaged. Like, there was that one speech that Charles had, I think we made fun of it on FDS, where he said, like, oh, I should have had 2 wives, and basically just, like, complaining that, like, his wife is more popular than him. And it's like, oh, cry you fucking river, Charles. Like, get over it.
So for the American audience, Princess Diana is Beyonce and Prince Charles is Jay-Z. Yeah, I guess he's there, but...
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Like, we came to see Beyonce, okay? Let's keep it a buck.
Yeah.
Like, we came to this joint concert to see Beyonce, and
it's almost like, even when it's just like, Beyonce getting dropped from her record label, but people still showing up to Jay-Z's concerts chanting Beyonce. Like,
right?
even when Diana was, stripped of her titles, people still, I guess, incorrectly called her Princess Diana because she's not a princess in her own right. But she's, even now, like Camilla, she's, technically Princess of Wales, but she dares not use that title. She calls herself Duchess of Cornwall because the Princess of Wales title is very much still associated with Diana, even though she's been, dead for the past 25 years. It's such a strong association between, and I'm not sure if anyone will ever hold the Princess of Wales title again after Diana, to be honest, because, people just associate that title with her now.
And what's the significance of the titles too? Because I know Meghan was upset about Archie not being given a title, which she said was essentially his birthright.
So this part of the interview, I had to dig into my royal history knowledge here. It sort of exposed like Meghan's, naivety. So the reason why Archie didn't get a title was due to a letters patent, which basically, like, letters patent is basically a law made by the monarch without passing through like Parliament. So basically, if they want to do something, they can just write like letters patent and it shall be done, sort of thing. So in 1917, during the First World War, the British royal family basically wanted to save money. So they did that by limiting, who could be, Her Royal Highness Prince or Princess of the United Kingdom. So they don't have to pay for so many people, because if you're HRH, you are entitled to, I think, an allowance and security. So they limited it to the children of the monarch and the grandchildren of a monarch. So in actual fact, Archie wouldn't have been entitled to the title of prince until Charles became king. The Queen could change that if she wanted to, but I mean, that's a separate issue if she was actually going to. But yeah, that was essentially the reason why he wasn't automatically afforded the title of prince.
But didn't she change it for some other kids or something?
Yeah, she changed it for William's children, so she can.
Okay.
I mean, so she can change it, but the way Meghan was talking in the interview, she was making out like he was automatically entitled to it and they just didn't give it to him, which wasn't like quite the case. But again, Harry should have clued her up on all this. Harry knows this, or should know this.
I think he wanted out, and I think he was just kind of using her. See, so this actually, I think, gives it so much more color, because like my initial reaction to the interview was more or less Meghan was talking about something that would happen in the royal family, and it just seemed like she was completely out there by herself. And it also just seemed like she was clearly insulted by a lot of things that the royal family did. And it doesn't seem like Harry assuaged her that much. It seems like he kind of egged her on and then when they made their Megxit, it was like, yes, I'm out, right? So he finally had an out in Meghan, and so he just sort of, it almost seems like he was amplifying her stress about the whole situation.
Yeah, definitely. And it feels like Harry is sort of, I don't want to say using Meghan, but he's sort of, I think even though he's broken away from the family, as, someone born into that, he still feels constrained by the rules and customs that you don't publicly badmouth basically other members of the family. But Meghan, because she doesn't come from that background, she's clearly more comfortable doing that. So he's happy for her to be the mouthpiece and essentially bare her soul. And because it was very telling at the end when he was like, oh, she saved me. And I was like, yikes.
Yeah.
That sounds very like codependent. And then she's like, oh no, he saved our family. And I was like, oh God.
Yeah. So we've seen the memes on like people keep posting them on the subreddit. They're just saying, oh, well, if your man won't leave his, his monarchy or his title for you, then he doesn't really love you. But I'm like, it seems like that was more a Harry desire that he used Meghan to amplify a reason to leave than he was doing this out of some valiant protection of her. I mean, he might have.
It could be both. Yeah.
It's probably a little bit of both, but it was probably definitely like he wanted to peace out. He sees this woman. She's obviously beautiful and accomplished, reminds him a lot of his mother, and has her own money, isn't, like a dependent or anything like that. And he sees an out, and now he's like, oh, do you know they're talking about our baby's skin color? And like she, maybe she. I could just see him being a gossipy, oh my God, like really playing it up. She just seems so insulted by everything. Like she was just shocked at everything. And Harry didn't really seem like he was talking down her concerns about it at all in the way that you've now explained to us, right? Especially since she got all of her information from him.
And even still, like, the letters painted 1917 is just a quick Google away. But I honestly think, like you said, Meghan was like, Archie's not going to get a title. And then Harry was like, wow, really? Just looking shocked Pikachu face, knowing full well that, the reason why some of his cousins don't have titles either. That's the reason why some of his cousins don't have titles. Like,
see, this makes me feel bad for Meghan too, because it seems, he's letting her take. Well, the way the British press and the press was spinning it is like she's like this evil succubus and has no respect for the monarchy. And it doesn't seem like, it seems like she's like a lot of people, which they go to an institution and they're very idealistic and they think, I'm gonna, you can use me to be the bridge to the future. And she finds out that the old guard and, is the way we do things. Here's all this red tape. This is how things are always done. You'll find similar things like that in America, especially in our government and, certain like long-standing corporations, that there's just an entrenched old guard that has a visceral negative reaction to anything new. And, Harry not really cluing her on the politics just amplified her sense of being attacked. Right?
Yeah, I agree. And also, like, Meghan's problem is she was too far down the pecking order to really make a difference. She was in the order of precedence, she would be behind Princess Charlotte and Prince, Louis, who are 3 and 5. Like that again, that's going to do something to your psyche when you're and the more kids William and Kate pop out, the less important you get. So, she was really, really far down. Like, I don't know how Americans, see it, but they saw it as she's marrying a prince. She's going to be a princess. And it wasn't like that at all.
I got to be honest, like, I don't understand anything about British royal family titles except for obviously king and queen in the first line of succession. And I think that's probably most Americans because we don't learn anything about, again, like most former colonies, only thing we learned about the British is more or less that we broke away from them and they sucked and we dumped all their shitty ass tea in a harbor once. and they
in the harbor,
red coat wearing in a guerrilla war type people.
I mean, but Meghan isn't even a princess in her own right. She can't even, if she is to use the title of princess, it would be like Princess Henry, which is Harry's full name. She's not Princess Meghan. So
I didn't even know his name was Henry. Learning new things every day. No clue.
Because normally a nickname is meant to be shorter than your actual name, but it's not. But yeah, he's Prince Henry.
I didn't even know their last name was Windsor till recently. I was like, oh, is that where a Windsor tie comes from? A Windsor knot.
It's actually Mountbatten Windsor, because Philip complained that he would be the only man in the country who wouldn't be able to pass down his name to his children. So it's officially Mountbatten Windsor.
Oh, so they changed their last name because of his fragile masculinity. Okay, like
I feel like you'd have to take a full course of history to learn this specifically, because it just seems so complicated. And I have had friends who are immigrants who tried to learn the American political system, and it seems decidedly more straightforward than some of the British monarchy stuff. And meaning like ours is more logically arranged, where it seems like the British monarchy sort of
Is it though? Is it? I don't know if I'd say the American system's more logical, like just my opinion, but
hey.
Yeah.
Well, like I guess if you look at it in the idea of, okay, they didn't want to live in a monarchy anymore, and we created all these states, and how do you govern a bunch of states? Well, we have three branches of government: legislative, executive, and judicial. And then we have the Congress, which represents the states, both based on population.
Girl, I know all this stuff, okay? But still.
Right.
But is it less complicated than the British system? Probably, yeah. Like all the nobility, monarchy, all that stuff. I don't know. I'm like so I'm so beyond that. Like I don't know. Like Queen Elizabeth's still technically the head of state in Canada, and like no one gives a shit about her, okay? Like just we see a picture of her at the front of all of our boats, and that's it. Okay, that's the only time I have to think about Queen Elizabeth is when I take a ferry, okay?
So that is the background, and I know people who have worked for the royals in their households, and they often say that when they fall out, like clearly William and Harry have, they just don't talk to each other. They talk through their representatives, who then twist stuff round, and then it just adds to the drama. They literally just cut each other off, and just don't speak.
I mean, a lot of people have dysfunctional families. You just amplify it with money and power, and
and publicity as well. I thought the Oprah
publicity,
but yeah, I think, and especially on the subreddit, when people are like, Harry and Meghan, high value couple, I just think they're not playing by the same rules as we do, because they can't, and I think everyone just sees Harry as a prince. It will be fantastic like Disney, but it's really not. Like the royal family, I think overall, I think they're a low value institution if you look at them as a whole. Like, they've got
Hey, this little country with 50 states agree.
If you look at it, the fact that they've gained their wealth through exploiting the non-West, that they essentially prioritize males over females, it's very
the fact that you can't get married unless you're a freaking virgin. Like, what is that?
Yeah, that's crazy.
But only the women, yeah.
I think they have gotten rid of that now. But Diana was the last one. But I think she had to have like an exam to prove that she was a virgin. Something crazy like that.
Ooh, that's barbaric.
And the fact that it's normal for the Prince of Wales, to have a mistress. So Charles having a mistress was not actually, and it was really weird because his, one of his ancestors, Edward VII, I think, his mistress was Camilla's ancestor.
Yeah, I read that.
So they actually, but it's normal, and
Games of Thronesy in here.
Yeah, exactly. So it's and they're not playing by the same rules, and I think it needs a lot of context. So when women say Harry and Meghan, he gave up, like you said, I think Harry wanted an out, and Meghan kind of pushed him out the door.
Yeah, because he's kind of letting her take a big portion of the blame for him leaving, and I'm a little bit scared that if they get divorced, he's gonna fully throw her under the bus now.
Yeah, agreed. So it's not always...
We got your back, Meghan. Don't worry about it.
But, speaking of Meghan and her treatment by the press, there is one, monumental, as we say on FDS, scrote, in all this, and that is Piers Morgan.
Right.
Piers Morgan is a British broadcaster who has publicly consistently attacked Meghan pretty much ever since she's joined the royal family. And this is by his own admission, because they went out together for drinks in London just before she met Harry, and she never texted him back. And he's clearly so wounded that any opportunity to attack her, he will take it. The final straw that broke the camel's back was when he said on Good Morning Britain, which is a news show in the UK, that he basically thought she was making up being suicidal. And the reason why that was, it wasn't because of what he said was so egregious. It was because the broadcaster ITV were running an anti-suicide campaign at the time. And that was what finally pushed him out the door. But he still stands by everything that he said, that he doesn't believe her, that he sees her as,
oh my God,
tarnishing the poor queen. Think of poor Philip in hospital. The guy's 99. Like, he's going to have health problems. And do you know what I mean? If he can survive his eldest son having phone sex with his mistress, if he can survive Prince Andrew almost admitting that he slept with underage girls, he can survive this as well.
Right. Yeah. Let's not forget about Prince Andrew and the completely disproportional reaction to
Prince Andrew the pedophile. Yeah.
No, it's not even alleged. There's pictures, right? He's been directly accused by a lot of the women who came forward during the Epstein trials, and there's pictures of him with the accusers. So,
and he's trying to do the whole plausible deniability. I don't recall that, when ridiculous. So they can't say I'm lying, but I'm not going to admit it, sort of thing. Like, it was just a complete car crash interview when he was interviewed by Emily Maitlis, who is an awesome journalist, by the way. And she was asking him about his association with Jeffrey Epstein. I think for me, the cherry on the bullshit cake in that interview was when he was like, why did you go to Jeffrey Epstein's house when, after he'd been convicted, he flew to New York and stayed in, with Epstein in his house. And as the son of a monarch, he can actually stay at any embassy. So the New York embassy was down the road from Epstein's house. And he was like, I thought it would be honourable to break up the friendship in person. So I was like, do you not have a phone? Just pick up your phone, say we are done, drop the phone, block his number, don't talk to him again. Like, why would you fly all the way to New York to tell someone you don't want to speak to them anymore?
And then stay at their house. That is like an evidence shredding party that definitely happened there, okay? Like, they definitely got together and were like, okay, let's see what we can cover up, see what kind of damage management we can get into right now.
And it's interesting that Meghan is seen as destroying the monarchy for speaking what is, her truth. But Andrew, it was, okay, he's going to retire now, but we're still paying for him sort of situation. It just beggars belief, really.
I mean, she's a woman, so she's going to get more blame than the man. And she's also an outsider. So, they're going to protect their own. Oh, another thing, might be a bit of a tangent, but I also just want to point out that all monarchies are inbred.
It's true. Like Elizabeth and Philip are cousins.
They're cousins,
in about 3 different ways.
Yeah, on like 3 different ways, they're cousins 3 times over, okay? Like, the thing that I don't like, this is what I don't like about monarchy, okay, is they're actually more closely related to each other. Like, the monarchy of, like, Greece and the monarchy of England and, Denmark and Sweden and the rest, they're all more closely related to each other than they are to the people that they rule. And so, of course, they have a vested interest in protecting their own. Yeah, it's about self-preservation. They want to preserve their own system that benefits them. They have no interest whatsoever or relation whatsoever to the people that they govern.
No, absolutely. I think actually Charles's generation were the first Brits to not marry their cousin.
Gross. We have those here, but we don't make them into political figures.
Yeah, the cousin fuckers of America and Canada are all poor, low class. Like, the cousin fuckers in Europe are all rich people. So it's just a different culture. Yeah, there's also what is it, King Charles or whatever of Spain, of the Habsburgs. He was so inbred that he was just a broken human. The Habsburg jaw, like, just through and through. He was like mentally fucked up, physically fucked up, couldn't get a boner, couldn't even stand, I think. Like, you know, he was just the worst person. And and there's like 10 generations of inbreeding that went on. Yeah, Charles II of Spain, okay? Just whoever's listening, go Google Charles II of Spain, okay? And then be horrified, okay? That's all you need to know about monarchy.
It feels like poetic justice, though, doesn't it? It feels like poetic justice that, yeah, okay, you can keep your precious royal bloodline, but your entire family's gonna look fucked up. They're gonna look toe up from the flow up.
Yeah, like his parents were like uncle and niece. What's so weird is didn't they have laws about like consanguinity or consanguinity, whatever? Like, you know, you can't marry someone who's too closely related to you. You have to get dispensation from the Pope. But they did it anyways. So like clearly it was more of a guideline and not a rule. That was my anti-monarchist rant. It's just they're all a bunch of fucking inbred idiots, okay? Just preserving their own wealth and not giving a crap about the people they govern. That's it. That's all I have to say about them.
Suddenly Americans don't seem so bad, huh?
I think that ultimately, though, Meghan is a very good example of why FDS always says, you know, to vet the man you're going to marry and to go in with your eyes open. From a strategy standpoint, it's just... I just can't help but think that maybe a lot of this could have been avoided if she just done a bit more due diligence.
She got caught up in the fairy tale more than likely. And I don't like when people call her a social climber. She's been married twice, I think, but her last couple husbands, they weren't like famous guys or anything like that. I think she was dating a chef before she was dating.
Also, what's wrong with social climbing? Okay, there's nothing wrong with social climbing. Go get it, girl.
And every woman who marries into the royal family is going to climb the social ladder, like just by virtue of marrying into them.
Right, exactly.
So it's not just her. Like the Middletons as well. Like, didn't Kate Middleton literally switch her degree so she'd be at the same university as William? Like the Middletons as well. They're also social climbers. Diana's family were also social climbers. So if you can snag, I guess, the Prince of Wales or soon to be Prince of Wales or even Harry, that is going to improve your social standing in the UK dramatically.
All right, well, that's our show. Please check out our website at thefemaledatingstrategy.com, as well as our Patreon, patreon.com/thefemaledatingstrategy. Thank you for listening, queens. And for all you basement nephews out there, die med.
Basement nephews.
See you next week.